Good morning, students. Today we will start our lesson from the book of history, our very first chapter, that is the rise of nationalism in Europe. First off, what do you understand by the term nationalism? Nationalism, it is a feeling of patriotism towards its country, a feeling of oneness by shared culture, values, religion, or language. In this chapter, we will study how the feeling of nationalism was started and built in the Europe region. There is this picture given in your textbook. It is a painting made by a French artist called Frédéric Soriot. It was made in the year 1848. So basically this painting was an imagination of Soriot's dream of a world that is made up of democratic and social republics. In this figure, you can see there is a statue of liberty. It is a statue of a female figure holding torch on the one hand and a book on the other hand. She signifies liberty, a state of being free, and the enlightenment, which is an act of having knowledge and understanding. Here is a long line of people. As you can see, there is a very long line. They are the people of Europe and America. There are men and women of all the ages and different social classes. They are passing through the Statue of Liberty to pay homage, that is respect. On the front side here, in the picture, on the front side of the ground, there are shattered remains of the symbols, such as, if you look closely, you can see there are crowns. These crowns are of absolutist institutions. Absolutist institutions means a monarchical form of government where the king ruled. And there is another important term that is used is utopian vision, which means an imagination of an ideal society which does not seem to exist. Here, the US and Switzerland are leading the procession, who were nation states. France has just reached the statue, followed by German people. All of the people here are holding flags of their country, and there are also others following German people. There are people of Austria, the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, Lombardy, Poland, England, Ireland, Hungary, and Russia. And on the sky above, the image of Christ, saints, and angels have been used to symbolize fraternity among the nations of the world. Can you describe what does this painting signify? What is exactly going on in here? There are some meaning hidden in this painting. So in this chapter, it will deal with the different issues that have been shown in the figure visualized by Frédéric Soriot. It was during 19th century that nationalism emerged and was spread widely in Europe. Many changes took place in various fields. In the end, they became nation-state, a state where king's rule was ended and rule of people prevailed. It took many turns and struggles to become a nation-state. Many leaders emerged to fight for its right. Their action and involvement of common people led to achieve a nation-state. This chapter will look at the diverse processes through which nation-states and nationalism came into being in 19th century Europe. The very beginning of the idea of nationalism came from 18th century. So let us look into our first section, the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. The first clear expression of nationalism came with the French Revolution in 1789. In class 9, all of you have already studied about the French Revolution, how the French Revolution started and different episodes that took place. The monarchical government was overthrown and the Louis XVI was executed because of treason. Can you recall the lesson? It all started in the year 1789. The political end Constitutional changes that came in the wake of the French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. So earlier it was completely under the rule of monarch. The changes in the politics and constitution began from the French Revolution. The supreme power, that is the sovereignty, was transferred from the king's rule to the citizens of France that formed a body to make a law and govern. From the very beginning, the French revolutionaries introduced various measures and practices that could create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people. Just as we Indians consider our nation as motherland, the French people, the revolutionaries, put forward the idea of la patrie, which means the fatherland. It refers to the homeland of les citoyens. Les citoyens, it means the citizen, meaning homeland of its citizens. This idea stressed on the equal right under a constitution. There were many changes that took place during French Revolution. Some of them are given here. First is a new French flag, the tricolor, was chosen to replace the former royal standard. A new flag was chosen and the color of the flag was blue, white and red in 3 vertical stripes. Second, the Estates General was elected by the body of active citizens and renamed the National Assembly. This group was initially formed by themselves without king's permission. They became the voice of common people of France. Later on, it was accepted by the king as well and was placed as the legislature. They got the right to make the law. And now in the third point, that is, new hymns were composed, oaths taken, and martyrs commemorated, all in the name of the nation. The national anthem for French was also composed, the patriotic song Marseillaise. And in the fourth point, that is, the administrative system was put in place and it formulated uniform laws for all citizens within its territory. A center body was created where equal laws for all the citizens were to be made and exercised. Main motive was to create equality. And also internal customs, duties and dues were abolished and a uniform system of weights and measures was adopted. Slavery and unfair means of taxes were abolished during this period, and some measures were also taken to improve the situation. And regional dialects were discouraged, and French, as it was spoken and written in Paris, became the common language of the nation. Language played a very important role. A common language was set up for all, and that language was French. France was already becoming a nation state. With that, the revolutionaries also aimed to spread it in whole of the Europe and free them from the monarchical form of government and help other people of Europe to become nation. During this period when nation state was in discussion, many political groups formed. One of the famous group was Jacobins Club. This group also brought about many changes. Their activities and campaigns prepared the way for the French armies which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland and much of Italy in the 1790s. This was the map of Europe during 19th century around 1815. France is located here. And with the outbreak of Revolutionary War, the French armies began to carry the idea of nationalism abroad, starting from its neighboring countries. Later, the instability of government gave way to Napoleon to conquer France. When he came to power, he introduced many reforms. The changing politics of France influenced other regions. Even they wanted a nation-state and abolish monarchy. Initially, they welcomed Napoleon. They enjoyed the reforms that Napoleon had set. But he was a military dictator. He destroyed democracy in France. But in the administrative field, he had incorporated revolutionary principles in order to make the whole system more rational and efficient. In a way, military form of government made it feel like monarchy was back. But to balance that, Napoleon set the reforms that citizens would enjoy. It was called the Civil Code of 1804, usually known as the Napoleonic Code. Napoleonic Code abolished or removed privileges based on birth, and also it established equality before the law and secured the right to property. And this code was exported to the regions under French control in the Dutch Republic, in Switzerland, in Italy, and Germany. Napoleon simplified administrative divisions, abolished the feudal system, and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. Feudal system, I think you know what feudal system is. It is a system where the owner of the land hires laborers, and the laborers are the landless people, and they work under the feudal lords. Sometimes they are paid in cash or kind, but if the laborers are unable to pay back to the lords, they had to work in their field. And in the towns too, guild restrictions were removed. Guild restrictions mean the group of merchants and traders were not allowed to do the business together. And transport and communication systems were improved. People like peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed a newfound freedom. People felt that it was good for them. All of the reforms were good, but with this, something began to change. So there were people who liked Napoleon as a ruler, and there were also people who began to dislike, because there were some problems starting to cause. There was also a mixed reaction among people. Initially, in many places such as Holland and Switzerland, as well as in certain cities like Brussels, Mainz, Milan, and Warsaw, the French armies were welcomed as harbingers of liberty. But the initial enthusiasm soon turned to hostility, as it became clear that the new administrative arrangements did not go hand in hand with political freedom. The problems that people began to face was because of the increased taxation and censorship, forced conscription into the French armies required to conquer the rest of Europe. All seemed to outweigh the advantages of the administrative changes. People were forced to join the army. Because of these problems, Napoleon, he slowly began to lose people's trust, and he slowly began to lose wars. His dictatorship didn't last long. So these were the reasons the French Revolution, where the idea of nationalism arose. And for today we will stop here, and in the next class we will study how the nationalism has spread in the rest of the Europe. Thank you.